Good morning, everyone. It's June 5th, 2023, and I'd like to do a little bit more on the different layers that I've been talking about, I should say, with the homeless, and what kind of support do we need for the homeless. I've mentioned different things, and I'm just going to go. I made a list of, and I prepared like a statement today that I wish to read from. And number one, they don't have any living skills. Number two, they don't know how to cook. Number three, they don't know how to clean. Number four, they don't know how to organize. Number five, there's a problem with problem solving. They don't even know how to problem solve. And another big one is how to budget. They never learned that. And of course, I will have to admit that is difficult in today's world that we're living in due to the inflation at the moment and the desperate need that we need for the food banks. So that's a big one. And they don't even have a clue how to pay their rent properly or on time. And another one, they have no idea how to apply for a job or to do a resume or even how to do an interview and how to even to dress for an interview. Now it's just put in the resume. Where I liked it the old way, where we had the interview and we had to meet face to face with a possible employer. And the other big one is when you talk about the affordable housing. Now, that is an interesting problem because that is a huge problem. But there's another problem I find is before we get them into the affordable housing, I think that they should be first at least learning the learning skills. All these different skills that I just mentioned above need to be done, because a landlord who wants to rent to them is not going to rent to someone who's addicted to drugs, because they're going to have parties, they're going to wreck the place, and if they don't even know how to take care of the place in the first place, they're not going to be wanted. They don't have the skills to do what is right. So landlords don't want to rent to them. So this is one reason that over the years I saw people, the renters, especially the landlords, wanted to raise the rents so that they couldn't afford a place. So this is another interesting thing that I saw. And I also was superintendent with my second husband, and I saw this coming because we were superintendent for the man who actually wrote the Landlord and Tenants Act, the original Landlord and Tenants Act. So I have a background in that too. So I do understand a lot of what's going on in there. And with the addiction services that they need, going back to the shelters with so many people addicted, and they go right back to the drugs and the alcohol. So even if they are living in the shelter and getting outside addiction help, it's not helping them to go back right where the addiction is and right where the temptation is to go back to the drugs or the alcohol. So that's not helping them. So if we could do all of the above, get them into the affordable housing, but we teach them all the necessary skills, then they wouldn't have to go back into a situation where they'd be tempted to go back on the drugs and the alcohol. And then another thing, before they need to earn their meals. This is giving them tasks to do even in the shelter. Now, this is what I'd seen with the drop-in centers, whereas I've said before that they've done the dishes and they've put the coffee out in the mornings and stuff like that. So that gave them some self-pride. That was a way of helping them to do a few steps forward. And They have the impression that everything is free for their meals, their clothes, the shelter. They don't have to pay for it. So they don't see that. That's no problem. They love it. Some of them just totally love it. And then, or some of them prefer to go out and panhandle or steal from one another. That's another big problem that we're dealing with today. And of course this also starts promoting bullying and harassment and among the homeless, as well as other such people as the residents and even people on the street or the bus are now suffering from some of this harassment and the bullying that we're seeing today. In some cases, I also believe it can some of the homeless, I think this brings attention to themselves. And in their case, bad attention is better than good attention. That's what my grandfather used to tell me. Sometimes people just want the bad attention. At least it gives them some attention. But the good attention is much better. But they don't see it that way. However, bad attention causes far more problems, such as it might become a criminal act, and with a record, it's harder to get a job. People look down at the homeless and believe that they are worthless, which causes more problems and resentment towards the whole homeless population and puts them in their own bracket, when in fact people are really in different stages of their lives, and if properly supported, could function well in society. Everything is just conveniently handed to them on a silver platter, and if they can't get it in this manner, they will do whatever it takes to get it, at any cost. For example, the next hit. So many would just prefer to lie around all day high, not to have to think or do anything, even dealing with their pain. The dealers have it made. They offer a way to make it pain-free from life itself. And there's no consequences for their actions. My grandfather, as a little girl, always told me that there is always consequences to your actions, whether they are good or bad. I learned that at a very early in my life. At about the age of 9, I got into an argument with my mother, in which grandfather overheard me swearing at my mother. Grandfather intervened. He informed me, as he was a blacksmith, that, "Young lady, there will be no swearing at your mother, and you are coming with me to the barn." I spent many wonderful hours at the barn with grandfather and had no idea what he had in store for me. When we got to the barn, he sat me down on a bale of hay, told me to wait there. When he came back, he was carrying an English saddle and then put it on my lap, then pulled out a rag and can of polish and informed me that I was going to have to polish the saddle till it shined and gleamed in the sunlight. I was about to say something to grandfather, then looking up at him at 6'1", he towered over me, and I thought better to do as he says. So I took the rag and started to try and polish the saddle. As I was doing it wrong, grandfather stopped watching me and sat down beside me and showed me how to do it right. It was a lot harder than I thought. You had to really rub it in. When I looked at grandfather again, he said to me, "Hard work and a little bit of elbow grease never killed anyone." That day, grandfather taught me two things. Hard work paid off, and that elbow grease made the saddle shine like a jewel. I even felt proud of myself. Grandfather also taught me a lesson on bad consequences. Things don't always turn out the way you expect. I wondered what would happen if I did a good consequence. What would that reward look like? I don't recall ever swearing at my mother again. I learned a very valuable lesson that day. So perhaps that's the way that the homeless should also be looked at, as children who in many cases have not been properly cared for in their early years, and perhaps society has to adapt to being substitute parents and show them right from wrong and good and bad consequences as well. This would also be a good way to support them, as in many cases it was not their fault as a child for the circumstances they found themselves in. Society should be a supportive society, equal to all people when needed as well. People need a hand up, not a hand out. This is one way of support. As a society, we need to look at our reflection in the mirror, and honesty relevant ourselves, which is relevant to ourselves as human beings taking care of each other. The system needs to set up a rewards program for good consequences and a program of reasonable consequences for those who are unable to see their way through to do bad consequences. Education here is a key, and that's on life. There are those homeless who want the help but can't get it. This is my opinion, what I have been seeing and discovering over the last few months. In finishing, I would like to say, one other thing I learned from my grandfather after polishing the saddle was that anything worth having is worth putting in the elbow grease to have it. This leads me to the question on how worth how worth it is to put the elbow grease into Ottawa. People remind me that Canada, out of all the G7 countries, is one of the richest. Why can't we not find the money to look after and house people in a human fashion? Surely Ottawa, the capital of Canada, is worth being the jewel of the country for all people coming or living here can enjoy and be proud of. Can all levels of government not roll up their sleeves and put the necessary elbow grease into making this happen? Even using your brains requires a certain amount of elbow grease. I wonder if computers are becoming the new elbow grease, outsmarting all of us, and our brains are slowly getting buried in the junk pile as what happened to independent and cooperative thinking. It seems that computers and the other bad word, money, are supposedly lack of money, are the new and dominant rulers. Surely, as compassionate human beings, we can come together and cooperate our efforts to solve this homeless and opioid addiction crisis and make a path forward so more people can be equal and not left behind in the dust. You only need to look in the mirror to see the reflection of reality. We are all worthy of love, no matter our situation. And a final word as well, Grandfather also taught me another valuable lesson called respect. Even though I may not have liked what my mother was telling me in our argument, I still needed to respect her. This is a lesson that all human beings should know, learn, and follow, as respect for one another goes a long way in cooperating with one another. In the world we live in today, problem solving is a very big issue. We don't need to be fighting amongst ourselves or bullying one another either. Our world has many possibilities and opportunities for all. So this is what I wish to put up today and talk to you about. And this is where I'm going to end the video today, but I have much more to say. And like I said, I have my very strong opinions too. And I've been very, very thankful for the way that I was brought up. And again, I'm thankful for everyone to listening to me, even though sometimes it gets a little longer on my videos than other times. And again, good day. Have a good day and keep safe. And we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye. Take care.